Hello and welcome back to Speak Up, CHHA's one and only summer student podcast, the show where three students with hearing loss openly discuss all accommodation issues from mask to education to transportation with a sprinkling of personal stories in between. In case you didn't know, CHHA stands for Canadian Hard of Hearing Association, connecting Canadians impacted by hearing loss through advocacy and community engagement. My name is Kaylin, and with me today are my co-hosts Jason and Catherine. Welcome, Jason and Catherine.
Hello.
Hi, guys. It's great to be here.
So today we're going to be talking about if public spaces are accessible for persons with hearing losses. And later on, we will be sharing some information regarding the CHHA blogs that will be released, so stay tuned.
To stay in the loop of when we drop another episode or for other CHHA news, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can sign up for our monthly newsletters, I Listen and I Listen Plus. Click on the link for more information down below.
All right, so let's get into our discussion. So the first question, super easy. What mode of transportation do you typically use?
So for me, I would say that it varies. Usually I drive by car just with my family or just by myself. But before, when I was in high school and when I was commuting from my university to back home, I would always take the bus a lot. And I do have a lot to say about that, but I want to get your opinions first. Do you have a similar experience, or what do you guys use?
I guess my type of transportation is right now either getting a ride from my parents in my parents' car, or I take the transit, public transportation, such as the bus or the TCC.
Yeah, so I pretty much had a similar experience as both of you. If I'm home, I typically use like my parents' car or something like that. But when I was at university, I was able to walk to school. But if I wanted to go, downtown to go shopping or, grab a bite to eat, then I would take like a public bus system. But this brings us into our next question is with these public transportation systems like the bus or the subway, what is your experience with accommodations or systems of accessibility on transportation? And this could include visual signage at airports, with the train, or even when announcements are made over the PA system.
Yeah, so whenever I'm on a bus or a train, I always need to pay close attention to where the bus is exactly, because very, very often I will be unable to hear the announcement over the speaker with this, usually there's a very robotic voice. And even with the digital signs, the ones that update with every new destination, very often I find that they're often delayed and it's not really possible to read them in time and be ready to say, depart at your next destination, to click the stop button and so on.
And what would you say your experience is, Catherine?
So it's very similar to Jason's. Mine is quite a bit annoying a little bit, where I am like trying to figure out what is this person is saying most of the time. So whenever I'm on like the TTC, luckily most of the lines do have some visuals going on, either through a blinking map system where I can see all the stops on pretty much all of the lines, and they just basically blink red or green to indicate we've either passed it or we're going in that direction. And if it's blinking, that means that we have arrived at that stop, at the stop that we will be going at. And that really helps me, because then, even though they do have like a display going on whenever someone's speaking, the announcement is going on and it tells you arriving at Queen Station, like, something like that. And that, I can, listen for it and I can do that. However, where it stops is when there is like an emergency. They don't tell you what's going on. I mean, sure, you can pick out, oh, it's a delay, but like they won't tell you like a scrolling text. They won't say that. They just say the captain is speaking. And I don't know. I don't want to know what the captain is speaking. I know he's speaking, but I don't know what he's saying, you know? And then there's like one particular line downtown, which is the line 2, which is basically a line that goes horizontally across uh, Toronto, which is a great way to get around when you are downtown. That line, because of it's the fact that it is a line that takes you across Toronto, it's a crucial line. And I think that's one of the reasons why it had not been updated in years. It is still like those old subway stations or like subway carts that you will probably find at New York City or something. Like it's very rackety and old. And because of that, it does not have any visual signage whatsoever. And it has a map, but I don't want to know. I know what the map looks like. I want to know where I am. And that means I have to look outside the window if we're above ground. If we're not above ground, I have to guess. I have to count in my head how many stops, which means I have to memorize how many stops there are before I get to my destination. It's a whole confusion. And then while I was last weekend when I was going on a campus tour for a St. George campus, I had to do an emergency go switch from the train to the bus. I don't like taking the bus because not only it's slow, it's because I won't know where it is, because the bus is not only picking up passengers who are trying to get to the next station, they are also picking up passengers who are just taking the bus regularly. So it's always stopping at different bus routes. And it tells you what stations will be arriving, but it doesn't tell you where we have arrived. And like I was convinced that we were still at Eglinton Station when really we were at my stop. And if it wasn't for my sister to point out, hey, out the window, there's St. Clair's Station, that's where we're supposed to go, I would have kept going. I would have kept going on that bus route if she didn't point it out to me. So yeah, I don't really like it.
Yeah, I would agree that my biggest issue when it comes to like public transportation is definitely like the announcements they make over like the PA. So I usually take the bus, as I said earlier, and with the bus they have like or I'm sure most buses do have like this sign at the front, and it will say like what the next stop is, or I'll just have like my Google Maps out and hope to get off to closest like to wherever my stop is. But if they made like any sort of announcement and I'm on my own, there's no way I'm going to be able to hear it. So I honestly would just hope for the best and that I would get to my destination. And the same goes for like airports and like the subway system as well. It's quite like muffled, I find, or like staticky when they do it. So definitely like the visual signage on the subway definitely helps me a lot. But if they could figure out like some way to make those PA announcements into like a text format or something, either to your phone or on like the side, I feel like that would benefit persons with hearing loss a lot. So moving on, I would like to know, what accommodations have you received from or at a public space? Have you been able to get any accommodations?
I have to think actually, because I don't remember the last time someone gave me an accommodation. Actually, I do. So I don't normally, for like a regular any customer service places, I don't, like if you were going to the bank, I haven't really got that. If you were to like buy food, I haven't really gotten that either. Maybe to ask for like like a printed out version of the menu to actually see, because I can't see very well because most of the things are back there, and it just helps when you don't want to, if you want to be able to like clearly state what you want to order. And so, it just helps with the whole max problem. But if I were to really pick out one moment where someone was willing to give me some form of accommodations, would be like 2 weeks ago, or yeah, about 2 weeks ago. I went to Niagara on the Lake, and I was going on a buggy ride with my family. But because we were on a buggy ride and I wanted to hear what the announcer was saying on the ride, I gave her my FM system to wear. And I explained her what it is for, how to put it on, and she just took it and was willing to allow me to allow her to wear it, and so that she could speak and stuff. And it was just so much easier. I didn't have to like strain too much on the ride. It was very comfortable, and I really enjoyed it.
For me personally, I haven't had anything like Catherine's experience, except for one big exception, and I think that would be movie theaters. But I know we're going to discuss that later, so I'm going to save my thoughts for the future.
Perfect. And I agree with you, Catherine, that I think the FAN system would be like wonderful to take around. I haven't really thought about, bringing around my personal FM, but that's definitely something for me to keep in mind. For my personal experience, I wouldn't say I've actually gone out of my way myself to get those accommodations, but it just made me think about, I was at Starbucks probably like a couple weeks ago, and they went through the drive-through, and normally I do fine with drive-throughs, like I have no problem with that, but with this particular drive-through, they had this screen, and it showed the person who I was talking to. And so I think that's really beneficial, especially for people with like who are lip reading, just to be able to see that person there. And I haven't seen anything like that like anywhere else. So I think that's a really cool invention. So moving on from accommodations, we're going to discuss what our experience is with hearing loops. Now, if you don't mind, Jason, I just might have you explain what hearing loops are, just so we all understand what they are again.
Yes. So for those who aren't aware, hearing loops, also called induction loop systems, use an electromagnetic field to transmit sound. And where these can be useful is where certain hearing devices like hearing aids and FM systems have what's called a T-switch, meaning they can pick up sounds from these loops. And some places you can see these loops include in movie theaters, in supermarkets, and at, say, grocery stores. And the reason these are useful is because they're almost like a built-in FM system, in that you can hear what the person is speaking directly in, say, your hearing aid or your cochlear implant.
That really is a genius invention, because, it really helps, especially during this time of like during the pandemic. I know we just spoke about the masks like a couple of weeks ago, but, I think it really is a great way to have people who cannot hear very well to get like a direct source of like hearing the other person and not having to like strain themselves too much. I will say I never had that experience before. I've seen a picture of what it looks like, but I've yet to like go through it and actually know what it's like to have that hooked into my hearing aids and stuff. So one day I will.
Yeah, I agree. It's a pretty interesting invention, and it's not something I've seen before either, except for in the pictures and an FN system. Just having it built into the store, I think, makes it more accessible. And that way it just removes that barrier right away too. It doesn't you don't have to explain, right, that you have a hearing loss. You can just flip it to the right program and then you're good to go, which I find is really interesting.
That's a great point that both of you make, in that if more stores and businesses were to have this, people with hearing loss could feel more confident that they're not inconveniencing these people by asking them to take into account their hearing loss. And although this isn't something that I've used myself, it's something that I've noticed in certain stores. They tend to display those big blue signs with the ear on them quite prominently, and it's something that hopefully we can see more often.
In addition to that, it also gives hearing loss a more visual component as well, because I'm sure Kaylin wrote an article for the blog about the invisibility of hearing loss. And while that is true, and even though we all have hearing assistive devices on our ears, most of that is like completely covered if you have hair that covers your hair. And then if for you, Jason, like sometimes you might be having like headphones or some other thing that might be blocking it. And so it's, very difficult for some people to like understand that you have a hearing loss if they can't see it. And so if you have like this invention of having hearing loops that, visually announces people like this is something for those who have hearing loss, and then you see someone using it, you can understand, okay, this person needs more accommodations. This person would probably take your time explaining or assisting this person. Just overall it just helps, I think.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, and I think it just reduces like that stress of what you were saying of trying to explain it, and are they going to understand like what I'm saying? So yeah, the hearing loops are a very cool intervention. So moving on from hearing loops, we're going to go back into more public spaces. So I want to know, what is your experience with getting captions for movies when going to the theaters, or any sort of accommodation really?
I'm sure Jason would like to go first.
Yes, I'm glad that we asked this, Kaylin, because I do have quite some experience with getting the closed captioning machines at movie theaters. So how these work, for those who aren't aware, is that certain movies, the studios provide the theaters with captions, and they provide the movie theaters, that is, they provide you with a special machine that you can put usually into your cup holder, and it will display captions in real time as the movie is playing, synced with the video, of course. And how I'd go about getting these is pretty simple. I just go up to ticket booth. I say, hey, can I have a closed captioning machine for so-and-so movie? And the one thing I would say that it usually takes a while, like usually I can wait maybe 10, 15 minutes for them to bring it over from the back. But otherwise, it's not a bad experience at all. And it really helps me to understand what's going on a lot more. Another thing I'll say is that sometimes movies don't have captions, or sometimes the captions are delayed, which causes a whole set of problems on its own that are, I'm sure, just as frustrating to anyone who's had hearing loss will understand. And I really just would like to see, in terms of the future for these closed captioning machines, I would really like to see all movies adopting captions. Like, I really don't think it's a strain or any particular difficulty on the part of studios to provide what I consider to be a pretty essential service. And I'd really encourage more studios, more, say, videos, to keep people with hearing loss in mind when they're creating their videos, when they're creating their shows, and so on.
Yeah, thank you for explaining how it works. I know that they exist, or that there's some form of how to get captioning for like theaters, because obviously we're during an age where streaming services are definitely a new thing that is very popular right now. And of course, you can get captions for those, and I love them. I absolutely love them. But, every once in a while, you want to get that theater experience, the popcorn, the games before the movies, all of that fun stuff. And so, in I had the privilege of getting a chance to watch 2 movies within a short period of time, which is definitely brand new for me because I don't normally do that. But it was really a great wake up call to really remind me of like, if going to the theater is really worth it? Because for me, obviously there's like the streaming services debacle of like, it's a lot cheaper to get streaming services than going to the movie theaters or whatever. But there's from the accessibility angle, even though there are like captioning available, or at least for some theaters or for some particular movies, as you said, Jason, I'm like, I personally have not gained the courage to do that or like ask, mainly because one, I'm like always going on time for the movies. I don't like to waste another 15 minutes. I want to sit down, get ready to watch the movie. I don't want to be like, to get people to wait for me. I don't like that form of inconvenience, even though 15 minutes is not a lot of time. But still, you know the whole thing. Another thing that has sort of like prevented me from it was just like how does it work? Like, do I look down on my lap, or like do I look at the screen? Because like it's like a weird thing. It's not very comfortable from what I understand.
Oh, yes. No, I was just going to explain more about how it works exactly because I realized I haven't completely explained it. So it's sort of like I want to say it's like a panel attached to a long metal bendy stick that you put in your cup holder. And how it works is you can adjust that long metal bendy stick, and you will typically place the captions right under the screen. So you're just looking at the movie, and then you can look a little bit downwards and see the captions. And assuming you position it correctly, assuming you see it in a nice place, you can end up just reading the captions as you watch, which is, of course, the ideal experience.
Okay, yeah, that sounds better than I was thinking, because I kind of had the same idea as Catherine. Was like, you're watching a movie, and then down on your lap, you've got to look down every time to see the words. But the fact that you can adjust it, to place it like under the screen, that's like the same as you could do like on a streaming service. Just I would say I'm sort of like in between both of you when it comes to getting accommodations at the movie theater. When I was younger, I definitely took more advantage of the technology, and at that time they didn't have the captioning thing available, or at least at the movie theater I went to. And so they basically had like an amplifier that I could just put over my ears, so I would just hear it louder. But the thing with that though is I still wouldn't be able to hear, the words properly. Either, there was still too much background noise in the movie, or, the character was like muffled when they were speaking, kind of thing. So I wasn't a huge fan of those, but I haven't had a chance yet really to try out the captioning technology yet. I would say I'm sort of similar in the experience with Catherine, and the fact that I just hate going out of my way sometimes to get that technology sort of, when I'm there with a group of friends, and then I have to be like, oh no, like, hold on, we're going to wait like 15 minutes for me to go get this kind of thing. Like, I know they wouldn't mind, but it's just a part of me that feels bad. Like, oh no. But it's definitely something I'll try out again now that I believe movie theaters are back open. So, yeah.
I just want to add on something. What you just mentioned, Kaylin, was that idea of what the characters being muffled. So there was a movie, I don't remember if I watched this in theaters or whatever, but the Dark Knight, like one of the Dark Knight movies that had the character Bane, which was basically this character who had like, I'm assuming he was like a Russian, some type of Eastern accent type of thing. So he has a very deep and Russian voice, you know? And then on top of that, he had like this giant muffled mask on top of his mouth. And with that combination, I had no idea what was happening. Sometimes I go into movies and I just like nod aloud. I just laugh. I like, I enjoy the movie. I can follow along because I'm like a reading. But like when I watch that movie or any movie like it, half the time I don't know what's going on. So when I get out of the movie and I hear what my family are like, discussing about the movie and stuff, then I understand, oh, that's what it was about. 'Cause I had no idea.
Yeah, I can definitely empathize with you, Catherine. I had that exact same experience before I found out about these closed captioning machines, and they've been a really great change.
Yeah, I just wish that either the movie people who create the movies or the theaters would just, or even the audience as well, be so open to add captioning on top of like on the screens or something, like actual like subtitles, like how they normally do it in streaming services. The thing is that most people just don't like seeing subtitles on top of movies. And I'm like, why? It helps you understand what's going on. But they think it's tacky, which is really sad. So that's why we have to resort to this strange contraption of having either an amplifier for headphones or an actual like tablet that come in front of us. But that's the same.
Yeah, I would agree as well. I wish they would put the captions at the bottom, but I know a lot of people don't like that. But I've like introduced, a lot of my friends or family into putting captioning, and now they don't like mind it actually, and they find that it even helps them hear better sometimes too, when people are like whispering or whatever on the show. So I think it's definitely that something that it will take time for people to get used to, but you never know. But speaking of technology that we wish was there or in the future, I want to know what type of futuristic technology should society develop to help break down communication barriers in public?
Mm-hmm. Good question. And the first thing that comes to my mind is something that I believe both you and I mentioned, Killen, is that in buses, I would really like to see the digital screens either being more prominent or better updated. Because right now, I think the situation with them is just not very good and it's not terribly helpful for people with hearing loss. And I noticed that I tend to rely much more on my phone and on, say, Google Maps than the actual bus itself, which is a real shame.
Just adding on to that, Jason, I think that there definitely needs some updating technology regarding individuals. So for more specific situations, for trains or like that, instead of just saying that the captain is speaking or whatever, or that an announcement is going on, that they actually say the announcement. I know it's probably going to be difficult to like capture what the caption is saying live, but transcription exists. Like it exists. And obviously they recorded most of the stops and so on. So it's definitely possible for them to add some form of like a live transcription that can be displayed on the scene. And then another thing is that Toronto just, instead of trying to build a brand new subway system line, that they just update line 2. That is my petition.
Yeah, I would agree that like right now society prioritizes like auditory signage, and I agree like with both of what you guys were saying, like live transcription is definitely like very helpful, and if we can do live transcription on this podcast right now, I feel like they should be able to do it, for most other programs as well, whether, with transportation or even at like the grocery store and stuff like that. It's definitely something that we could look into. All right, so I will hand it over to Jason for some CHHA news.
Make sure to check out our CHHA blog post on accommodation, invisible disabilities, and more, all in the link down below. Thank you guys. And to stay in the loop on when we drop another Speak Up episode or for other CHHA news, make sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can also sign up for our monthly newsletters, iListen and iListen Plus.
You are listening to Speak Up, CHHA's summer student podcast. Stay tuned.